Star Trek Strange New World Season 4 feels like one of those rare moments where a sci-fi show isn't just continuing its story, it's actually evolving into something bigger than itself. And honestly, if you've been following this series closely, you already know this isn't your typical Star Trek entry anymore. It's become this really interesting, almost unpredictable mix of classic exploration, storytelling, and modern experimental television that sometimes surprises you more than you expect it to. There's something quietly special happening with this show, and I think Season 4 is where it all starts to crystallize into something we're going to be talking about for a long time. What's fascinating right now is how Strange New Worlds has positioned itself as the one Star Trek series in the modern era that genuinely feels like it understands what made the original so beloved, while also refusing to be trapped by it. Discovery leaned heavily into serialized mythology. Picard was nostalgia-driven to its core. Prodigy was wonderful, but built for a younger audience. Lower Decks just wrapped up entirely. But Strange New Worlds? It found a sweet spot. And Season 4 is about to prove whether that sweet spot was a lucky accident or a carefully crafted vision. Let's talk about Season 3 for a second, because you can't fully appreciate where Season 4 is headed without understanding what the show just came through. Season 3 was polarizing in the best and most interesting way. The genre-bending episodes, the romantic arcs that started dominating screen time, the tonal shifts that sometimes felt jarring within the same episode. Fans had real, legitimate critiques. There were moments where some people felt the show was drifting away from actual exploration storytelling and leaning too hard into character relationship drama. And look, those criticisms aren't unfair. When you come into a Star Trek series expecting to boldly go somewhere new and instead spend half an episode watching relationship tension play out, it creates friction. But here's the thing I kept coming back to while watching Season 3. Even when episodes didn't fully land, the show never felt like it lost its confidence. It was making creative swings, sometimes messy ones, but it was swinging. And the fandom, even the critical corners of it, never really stopped caring. That's actually a really hard thing to maintain. Shows that play it safe don't generate that level of passionate discourse. Strange New Worlds keeps people in the conversation, which means it's doing something right at its core, even when the execution wobbles. Now Season 4 is walking into that exact energy. And from everything we know so far, it sounds like the creative team has heard the feedback, processed it, but also isn't abandoning what makes the show distinctly itself. What we're hearing about Season 4 is a renewed emphasis on actual exploration, going to genuinely strange, weird, dangerous places, while still honoring the emotional character work that's defined the series. That balance is everything. One of the things that immediately jumped out about Season 4's early story details is the black hole mystery element. Now, anytime Star Trek leans into astrophysical phenomena as a storytelling device, I pay very close attention, because the best episodes in the entire franchise's history have used space itself as a kind of character. A black hole mystery suggests something cosmologically significant, something that could ripple out into larger philosophical or even temporal implications. And if Strange New Worlds handles that with the same ambition it's occasionally shown in its best episodes, we could be looking at one of the more intellectually rich storylines the series has done. The speculation I keep coming back to is whether this connects to any broader continuity threads, because black holes and time in Star Trek have a long, complicated, fascinating history together. Then there's the horror episode. Every time Strange New Worlds does a genre episode, it becomes one of the most talked about entries of its season. The musical episode was divisive. The puppet episode concept that's been floating around fan discussion sounds absolutely wild, and I mean that in the most intriguing way possible. If they actually commit to something that experimental, it tells you everything about how confident this creative team feels right now. Genre episodes, when they work, do something remarkable. They reveal character in ways that straightforward drama can't. When you put Pike in a horror scenario, or Chapel in something surreal, you learn things about those people that 20 minutes of dialogue could never communicate. So I'm genuinely excited about what a horror-leaning episode does to this particular crew. And then there's the dinosaur planet. I don't want to undersell how delightfully weird that sounds, because honestly, it should sound weird. One of the things Strange New Worlds promised from its very first episode was that the Enterprise would actually go places that feel alien, dangerous, and truly unknown. A world with dinosaur-level life forms has massive storytelling potential. You could explore it as pure adventure. You could tie it into themes of evolution and intelligence, or you could use it as a backdrop for something much darker. The exploding world tease is equally intriguing for similar reasons. There's something almost Old Testament about a planet that literally destroys itself, and the moral and philosophical weight of watching something like that, especially for a crew that's supposed to protect life, could generate some of the most emotionally heavy material the series has attempted. Character-wise, this is where I think Season 4 becomes genuinely compelling to break down. Pike remains one of the best-written captains in all of modern Trek, and what makes him so interesting is the tragic, dramatic irony baked into his existence. We already know his fate from the original series timeline. Every moment of heroism, every choice he makes, carries this quiet weight because we know where it ends. Anson Mount plays that with such restraint and warmth that it never feels maudlin. But as we get closer to the end of Strange New Worlds' run, that weight is only going to increase. I expect Season 4 to start nudging that shadow forward, even subtly. Spock's journey continues to be one of the more carefully constructed character arcs on the show. The tension between his Vulcan discipline and his very real emotional life has always been the series' most intellectually satisfying thread. With Kirk now in the mix, and the Kirk-Spock dynamic being one of the most iconic in all of science fiction, every scene between them carries enormous franchise significance. What Strange New Worlds is doing, whether intentionally or not, is reverse engineering one of fiction's great friendships. And that's a genuinely delicate, difficult thing to do without making it feel like fan service. When it works, it's extraordinary. Season 4 has the opportunity to deepen that bond in ways that actually make you feel the weight of the original series differently. Chapel, Lon, and Uhura have all become central to the show's emotional core in ways that feel earned rather than forced. Lon's storyline has always had this fascinating geopolitical dimension, the Khan legacy, the weight of genetic history, that I think Season 4 could push into even more uncomfortable territory. And Uhura, played with such quiet intensity and intelligence by Celia Rose Gooding, feels like she's on the verge of a defining moment. She came into this series as someone finding herself under pressure. By the end of Strange New Worlds, she needs to feel like the Uhura we know from the original series. That transformation arc still has room to breathe, and Season 4 seems like the right time to start accelerating it. Now let's talk about where all of this is going. Strange New Worlds has been confirmed through at least a Season 5, and the way the show is structured, with the original series timeline as its horizon, means every season is subtly a countdown. Season 4 probably isn't where the show ends its story, but it might be where the gravitational pull of that inevitable future starts becoming impossible to ignore. I think we'll see decisions made this season that begin closing off certain possibilities, certain relationship trajectories, certain character futures, in ways that feel true to continuity without being slavishly bound by it. The best prequel storytelling makes you feel the weight of what's coming even when nothing dramatic has happened yet. My personal theory, and I'm curious if anyone else is tracking this, is that Season 4 uses the cosmic, large-scale storylines like the Black Hole Mystery to mirror something smaller and more personal happening within the crew. That's been the show's best structural trick. The universe reflects the characters, and the characters reflect the universe. If they execute that philosophy at a higher level than they ever have before, Season 4 could genuinely be Strange New Worlds at its absolute peak. The puppet episode concept, if it materializes, might sound absurd on the surface, but think about what it actually represents. It represents a show that trusts its audience enough to take them somewhere completely unexpected. That kind of creative courage, especially in a franchise with 50 years of canon pressure bearing down on every decision, deserves genuine respect. Even if it doesn't land perfectly, The attempt itself says something important about what Strange New Worlds is trying to be. At the end of all of this, what I keep coming back to is how much I want this show to stick the landing. Strange New Worlds arrived as a kind of creative lifeline for a part of Star Trek fandom that wanted something hopeful, optimistic, and adventurous. It delivered on that promise with real heart. Season 4 has the chance to be where all those carefully laid threads, the character arcs, the franchise mythology, the experimental storytelling, finally start weaving into something genuinely transcendent. The Enterprise is heading somewhere new, and honestly, I can't wait to get there.